I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it.
The palace did not whisper this time. It did not hide behind careful smiles, polished phrases, or quiet corrections in the royal record. Prince William stepped into the center of the storm and confirmed the decision that had been hanging over Windsor like a blade. Meghan had been stripped of all remaining titles. For the monarchy, it was not just discipline. It was the final closing of a door. And that moment, that exact moment, changed everything. Not slowly, not quietly, instantly, because this wasn't just another royal adjustment buried under polite language. This was a line drawn so sharply it cut straight through blood, loyalty, and whatever fragile connection still existed behind palace walls. William didn't just speak, he executed something that had been building in silence for far too long. Weeks of sealed meetings, quiet legal reviews, papers moving behind closed doors like shadows no one was supposed to notice. And yet, everyone felt it coming, like pressure before a storm, like a decision that once made could never be undone. He stood there, not as a brother, not even as a son, but as something colder, something heavier, the future king. One hand resting on the table, eyes fixed, voice controlled, but the silence around him, that was louder than anything he said. Because in Windsor, silence is never empty. It's loaded. It's deliberate. It hides decisions long before they're announced. And that folder placed in front of him, it didn't just carry paperwork. It carried consequences. History, finality, one nod, just one, and everything Meghan still held on to would disappear from the royal frame. And when the message reached her, there was no dramatic reaction, no interruption, no denial. That's what made it unsettling, because disbelief flashed across her face for a second, just a crack, but then something else took over. Something colder. Stillness, the kind of stillness that doesn't mean acceptance, it means realization. She understood instantly. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a correction. This was removal. Total, structured, documented removal. The kind that doesn't just affect headlines, it rewrites how history will mention you. And here's where it gets darker, because this decision didn't exist in isolation. It wasn't just about Meghan. It was about pressure building from every direction. William knew the ripple would hit Harry first. Hard, he knew Charles would feel it like a split between duty and fatherhood. He knew Catherine would see the weight he was carrying, even if no one else did. And still, he went through with it. That tells you something. Not about emotion, but about what had already been lost behind the scenes. Because this wasn't a sudden move. It had a trigger. A hidden one. Something so small on the surface that most people would ignore it, but inside palace protocol, it was explosive. A rehearsal sheet, a ceremonial seating plan, Meghan's name placed alongside working royals, not as history, not as memory, as presence, as if she still belonged inside the future structure. And when William saw it, he didn't react loudly. He didn't need to. The silence in that room tightened instantly, because everyone understood what that meant. A name in the wrong place isn't a mistake in Windsor, it's a statement. And no one corrected it, not immediately. That hesitation, that delay, that was the real clue. It meant the system hadn't fully let go, that somewhere inside those walls, someone was still holding a door open, maybe out of habit, maybe out of hope, or maybe out of pressure no one wanted to admit. And when the truth came out that the listing had simply carried over from older files, it didn't calm anything. It made it worse, because now it wasn't emotional. It was structural, written, embedded, waiting to become precedent. Charles saw it later, alone, and the way he reacted said more than any speech ever could. He didn't argue, he didn't shout. He paused, removed his glasses, looked at the page like it was something heavier than paper. Because he knew once something is written inside palace systems, it has a way of surviving longer than feelings. And that's when the deeper layer surfaced. Harry's request, quietly attached, asking for Meghan to retain ceremonial recognition. Not publicly, not loudly, quietly, but it was there. Proof that this wasn't just an oversight. It was a battle being fought in silence. And suddenly everything connected. Meghan wasn't just holding on to a title, she was holding on to position, influence, a thread back into Windsor's future. William saw that thread for what it was: a risk, a loophole, a future conflict waiting to explode, and once he saw it, there was no going back, because now it wasn't about the past anymore. It was about control of what comes next. And inside the palace, control is everything. And the moment William called for a full title review, everyone knew something irreversible had just begun. The kind of process that doesn't end with compromise. It ends with confrontation. And somewhere behind another another closed door, that confrontation was already waiting to happen. And when that door finally closed behind them, the air inside that room changed in a way no one could pretend was temporary. This was no longer a disagreement that could be softened with careful words or delayed with another quiet meeting. It had become something far more dangerous, a direct collision between two brothers who no longer recognized the same version of the truth. Harry was already there, waiting, anger sitting just beneath the surface, not explosive, not yet, but tightly controlled, like something ready to break the moment it was pushed too far. William entered with the final file in his hand, and that detail alone said everything. He hadn't come to discuss, he had come to confirm. The file touched the table, and the silence that followed was almost unbearable, because both of them knew once that file was opened, there would be no space left for illusion. Harry looked at it not like a document, but like a verdict, something already decided without him. And that's when it hit him the realization that this wasn't a negotiation. It was an announcement disguised as a conversation. His voice came first, sharp, controlled, but filled with something deeper than anger. Accusation, he called it punishment. He called it calculated. And beneath all of it, he called it betrayal. William didn't raise his voice. That was the unsettling part. He didn't react emotionally, didn't defend himself with heat. He responded with something colder, something final. He said it wasn't punishment, it was protection. That word hung in the room like a contradiction neither of them could ignore. Protection of what? The crown? The institution? Or protection from something they were no longer willing to tolerate? Harry heard judgment in it. William meant boundary. And that difference, that gap in understanding, that was where everything broke. Harry leaned forward, pushing harder now, trying to force an opening, trying to find even a small crack where this decision could still be challenged. Because he had believed right up until this moment that there would always be one more chance, one more call, one more appeal, one last moment where family would override structure. But William didn't give him that. He didn't list past conflicts. He didn't expose private wounds. That restraint wasn't kindness. It was strategy, because once personal accusations enter the room, control disappears. And William wasn't losing control. Not now. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Harry revealed what Meghan had been holding on to, the belief that Charles would step in at the last second, that the king, as both monarch and father, would stop this before it became irreversible. That belief wasn't just hope. It was the final safety net, the last reason this entire situation hadn't collapsed sooner. And when Harry said it out loud, when he placed that expectation on the table, something changed in William's expression. Not anger, not frustration, something heavier, because he knew what he was about to say would end more than the argument. He didn't rush it. He let the silence build first. And then, quietly, he told the truth. The approval had already been given. The decision had already moved forward. Charles had read the file and allowed it. That was it. No dramatic emphasis, no explanation, just fact. And the impact was immediate. Harry didn't react with rage this time. That would have been easier. Instead, something else took over. Shock, the kind that strips away every prepared argument in an instant. The appeal he thought he still had was already gone before he walked into the room. The chair moved back sharply, the sound cutting through the silence like something breaking. But even then, William didn't stand. He stayed exactly where he was, grounded, unmoving, carrying the weight of a decision that had already crossed the point of reversal. Two brothers, one table, one file, and suddenly the distance between them felt larger than anything that had come before. Because this wasn't just about Meghan anymore. It was about authority, about who decides, about who carries the future, and who is no longer part of shaping it. And while that confrontation ended without resolution, something far more powerful was already moving beyond that room. The machinery of the crown had aligned, quietly, completely, because behind every emotional moment, there was a system waiting to enforce it. Papers prepared, instructions drafted, adjustments ready to be executed the second permission was given. And that permission came with a single signature. Charles sat alone when it happened. No audience, no announcement, just a pen, a document, and a decision that carried both duty and loss in equal measure. He didn't hesitate because he didn't care. He hesitated because he understood exactly what it would cost. But hesitation had already run out. And when the pen finally touched the paper, it didn't just confirm Meghan's removal. It confirmed something else far more significant. The moment the monarchy stopped bending and started enforcing its own limits.